Now, how do you know if your teen is ready for Algebra 1? So we're continuing on our video series where we talked about last week the what do you do for seventh grade math. We just get so many questions about this, so we're really trying to drill down a little bit and address some of the questions about Algebra 1, getting in and crossing the chasm from first through sixth grade over to eighth grade, ninth grade, which is where we normally see Algebra 1, and what happens there in the middle, which is, as we talked about in the previous video, which we'll put a link to below on what to do for the seventh grade math. But we, in one of our videos about what's pre-algebra, we'll put a link to all that below. But it's just as a chasm. You know, you're crossing this chasm from school. You know, from a first to sixth grade school to high school. One of the things though is how do you know if they're ready? Starting algebra too soon can crush confidence. Right? It's just too hard. If you've ever plowed into something that's just way too much for you, and you're like, I don't understand anything on from day one, you know, it can crush your confidence. You know, it's like starting a workout program way too advanced, trying to keep up with your friends that have been doing it for years, right? You just like, I'm just out of shape, and I'm just going to be that way. But if you do it the other way around, if you start it too late, you get boredom, and confidence is kind of easier to overcome. Boredom sets in something that's a little bit like poison. I mean, I see this in the corporate world. I see people who are bored with their jobs and just goes downhill, and it really can be difficult to recover from boredom. So that, to me, that's a bigger danger. Is starting too late, trying to keep them in times tables and fractions and some very basic things way too long. They're bored with it, and it just really goes downhill. So how do you know the right time? I mean, that's the question we're going to try to talk about right here. How do you know the right time? So timing does matter. Obviously, there is a sequence of events. We need to get them from point A to point B. There are steps in the middle to take. But what we see when we start too early is we see the gaps, and there's gaps, frustration. There's even frustration with parent and student. And we covered in the last video is what basically we're looking for: basic math, you know, some fractions and the order of operations, a couple of other things. We're looking for, do they understand this? Do they generally know what's going on? It doesn't mean, you know, when we talk about multiplication, it doesn't mean I can throw two three-digit numbers on the table and they can just look at it and say, oh, that's the answer. But and maybe they don't even want to struggle with doing it, but they understand how to get from point A to get to the answer. Right. It doesn't mean they're necessarily even fast, in my view, because that's a skill we probably won't really be using, but we understand what happens to do that. So that's the kind of things that we're looking for. Do they understand what is going on? So when you're starting too early, you get these gaps. When you're starting too late, seventh and eighth grade turns into that holding pattern. It kills momentum. And as we talked about in the previous video, that's what we see happening in the public and private school systems. Some of them try to fix it. Some of them make some adjustments, but they're dealing with hundreds of kids at a time, and they have to think about averages, right? What is the average student doing? They also have to think about money in a way that we don't have to think about. Usually what we mean is federal money. These being a bridge year, so no matter how you look at it, seventh and eighth grade is designed by the system, right, that we're all in, whether we like it or not. There's some parts of it we are in, being in homeschool, is the system has this as a bridge year. And part of the reason is because we see that in high school starts in ninth grade, whether you want it to or not. because that's when the transcripts starts being collected. And we talk about transcript in the last video and also, but the so that's the system we're somewhat stuck in. We have a lot of more leverage than the public-private sector does, but we can do that. But the beauty of this is with that transition period, we can move from basic math in first through sixth grade to algebra in whatever grade at a smooth pattern. And we don't have to go through this regimented thing that the system uses, because some of us, our kids are ready. Some of us, our kids are ready in sixth grade. Some of us, our kids won't be ready till 10th grade. So we get to help them migrate this path here. So, all right. So, but the timing does matter, because this is a bridge time, and don't try to force it. Don't try to say we're going to be doing Algebra 1 here on day 1 of 7th grade. And don't say we're going to be just reviewing for the next 2 years. I mean, both of those can be really wrong answers, because your student is your student, right? They have particular skills, particular interest. So let's think about signs that they are ready. Signs that they are ready to jump into algebra in particular. Confidence with a couple of the things that we see in basic math with fractions and decimals and percents. Right? And I say this, and I can tell you there's lots of us adults that will say, well, we're not confident yet, and we got past that because we're not. But there's lots of us. I mean, we use it all the time. We use it when we're cooking, half a cup. We use it in measurements when we're building things. We see things on sale. And I mean, we're using it all the time, but we don't necessarily understand, when you have a pizza and you divide it into things that we're talking about fractions, we're talking about decimals, we're talking about percentages, right? When you cut up your pizza into, what is it? I think most pizza places, they cut the pizza. Your normal a normal diet, if pizza is even in a normal diet, if it should be, I don't know, would have you eat a fourth of a pizza. Right? If you look at some of the apps, like if you're a person who tracks your protein intake or your calorie intake, and a lot of your apps will say, you've ordered a Domino's pizza and you've had one serving, and it's I think it's usually a fourth of the pizza. You're doing fractions right there, right? If you are tracking your calories or protein intake or whatever you do on these apps, you're constantly doing fractions, and so are your kids, right? They're used to doing this a lot more than we think they're doing it, but they don't necessarily translate it to math. Things like Minecraft and some of the games out there, so much of this stuff is just built into what they're doing. It's not intentional. They're not trying to teach math. It's just part of the process of using modern technology. So you're looking for a confidence with fractions and percentages. Not only do they know what they are, but do they see them being used around them? Where do they see them? Can they work with negative numbers? Again, some of these video games are wonderful in this. Minecraft has you doing things. I'm no Minecraft expert, but I have seen enough of Minecraft to know it has all kinds of things in here that translate to real life. But can you work with negative numbers? Do you get freaked out at working with negative numbers? Do you understand what's going on? Can you understand ratios and proportions? And are you comfortable with 1 and 2 step equations? Now, I don't mean 2 variable equations for those of you that might be more mathy, but 1 and 2 steps, to solve the equations. Simple equations. Can you handle some word problems? Now, these are signs that you're ready now, but if you're thinking, whoa, Dale, this is way too much information, there's no way. What I mean is, are we just comfortable with these ideas? Do we get these ideas? We do word problems all the time. right? We do word problems just by saying in the kitchen, we bought this pizza and there's so many people and we need to divide it equally, right? Our kids are actually experts at these word problems of translating things into real life math. They just don't know it, right? They do it all the time. You do it all the time. We use all this stuff all the time. We're just not calling it math. We're calling it pizza, and that's a whole different language. So, what we're looking for here is comfort, and comfort. Not that I'm an expert at doing these things, but I'm comfortable with the idea of these things, because when we jump into algebra, and especially like we use the Harold Jacobs Algebra. So this is the old book, if some of you may recognize, not the book that you had used before. But as you would look at the beginning of this book, you see us beginning with fundamental operations. So this is Algebra 1 book. This is what's called elementary algebra. It's what we would give credit for Algebra 1 for getting through this whole beast. And if you look at the first chapter, it's fundamental operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, raising to a power, 0 and 1, parentheses, distributive rule. That sounds like order of operations, right? So you understand some of this? Are you going to repeat some of this? Yes, you are. But are we going to spend a year on it? No, we're going to spend a chapter on it. Then we have some functions and graph. It's chapter 2 of this. Some basic, what's a function? They've probably already seen all this, right? But so we're saying, have we seen it? Are we kind of comfortable with the idea of it? We're not an expert in any of this. And so we go on to chapter 3 and we talk about what's an integer, and we go on to chapter 4 is what's rational numbers. And so you might be thinking, well, that's what I've just covered. Yes, that's the idea. But we're building on, and we're starting to build a little bit of algebra into that. But we're doing it quickly. It's in context of Algebra 1 because, that's part of the game. So when I'm saying all this, we're talking about, do I understand what that means when fraction? Can I do some basic stuff? Because most of us are not super great with fractions. Like, matter of fact, we know statistically that many people cannot read a tape measure. Many people who graduate high school in the United States cannot read a tape measure besides the 1 inch, the 2 inch, the 3 inch. They don't really know how to read it. We don't want to be that, right? That's not where we want to be, but that's what we're looking for is some level of, hey, I can see this. I know what's going on. I'm looking at a negative number. I'm not freaking out. I know what a negative number is. I know you add and subtract it differently. I know what a ratio and proportion is when you see 3 halves. That's ratios and proportions. It's the same thing as fractions, right? A lot of these is just renamed. So that's what we're looking for. So, but how do you know when they're ready? These are signs when they're ready. When I can kind of do these things, I get these, and I just want to encourage us parents. Look for the signs, not in their math homework. Look for the signs in all the things that they do in life. And I kid you not, Minecraft, if that's what they're into, video games of some sort, if that's what they do, music. We see a lot of mathematics in music that's just built into there. Fractions is part of music. Half notes, quarter notes, right? That's fractions. So we see this if they're into the kitchen, right? If they do things, they're using all this stuff all the time. The pizza example, you're just looking for, do they understand it? Which is a great way to teach it also if you haven't already been doing that. But can they apply this material? So these are signs that they're ready. But now, how do you test it? How do you get, okay, these are nice little signs and this is nice and fuzzy. Can I get something more concrete? Yes, we have a readiness test. By the way, there's a link down below to what is pre-algebra that we go into this. And maybe I just repeated some of that. But there's a link that gives you more about the book. Readiness test. there's a link down below to an actual readiness test you can print out, you can give to your student, they can take it, and it's a diagnostic. Okay, so, and it's like any other test. It's not perfect because sometimes students freak out when they take tests and things like that, but it will give you a nice little baseline of where you are. So in this readiness test, it's got some grading scale. I don't remember. Let's just go with an 85%. If they score 85% on this, I think it's actually 80, but if they score whatever that is, they're ready for Algebra 1. If they score anything above that, certainly just in Algebra 1. And when I mean Algebra 1, I mean a Algebra 1 that you see typically in a high school, which does involve some review. This book I would consider Pre-Algebra and Algebra 1 together. Okay, so you can start that in the 7th grade. That's fine. If you're kind of down, but the score was below the 80, maybe it's down to the 70s or 60s. I don't know. You're like, I don't know. Then what we're looking for is some targeted review. And what we mean by that is look at where the problems were. Because we look at what's on these tests is fractions, negative numbers, ratios, proportions, some very basic problem solving. Some small geometry type stuff. Where was their problem? Go find that and solve that. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can use like worksheets. In the past, we've used Math Mammoth. You can find that material in this book and on our videos. Go look for that specific material. Just go to that and say, let's just work some of these problems. You can download tons of worksheets on the internet. You can actually, like I said, Math Mammoths is what we used to use. You just want to review that one concept. You don't want to go back and start over again. We talked about that in the last video. So you want to do some strengthened review. Below 70 or 60, I don't know, there's a cutoff, and I'm telling you 70. I'm not looking at the actual test itself right now, so use whatever we said on the test. Below that, you need to really strengthen before starting. And again, though, even below that, that probably means they have 2 or 3 areas that they're weak in. Like the test has like 5 or 6 key areas, and maybe they're weak in a couple of them. And so you need to spend a little more time strengthening the 2 areas. So for instance, if they're really good at fractions and they get the idea of fractions and they do well on the fraction components, don't spend your time messing with fractions and boring them. Get to the problem areas, let them retake the test, see if they can't shore that up and understand what's going on, and then move on into this. As a default, I would say you're safer to even move on into this book than to wallow around in 7th and 8th grade math, typical math, what we would sometimes call pre-algebra, to wallow around in that for too long. Back to the boredom issue. You would rather be, I'm going to jump in here and we're just going to move slowly. And when we see problems, we're going to kind of stop and deal with them there. You're better off doing that than you are just spending another year doing nothing. And now, of course, if you let your test be your guide, but this is an analytic. Now, let me just tell you something that you probably already know. You've been teaching for a long time. If you are in this space and you're watching this video, you know that none of these tools are perfect. Tests are not perfect. We know that. Just because somebody can't pass a test doesn't mean they're not brilliant. Just because they can doesn't mean they actually understand something. Many people just learn for the test. So you're the parent, you know the student, you can use that as a guide, right? These are tools to help you, but they're not, but your own judgment probably is better than these tools, but use them to kind of help you in your judgment. What do you do if they're not ready, though? What if you're just sitting here and thinking, well, wow, they didn't do as well as I thought, or I didn't think they were going to do that well? Just don't panic. We all have weak areas. just review these weak areas and redo it in a month or two. Like I said, use this as a bridge course. Just jump on in there and use this as a bridge course. Keep it slow. Keep momentum, right? You want to be moving forward. We all can feel when all progress is stopped, right? There's nothing worse for us than to feel like we are in a holding pattern. I mean, if you've ever been, in your city and they're redoing the interstate system and you're like, okay, things are moving. It's frustrating, right? But we're glad that they're fixing the interstate, making it wider. But when you get to the point you're like, I've driven down this interstate for the last 3 weeks and nothing has happened. We're in a stall pattern, which does happen for various reasons. That's frustrating. That's, especially if it matters a lot, or if like you're building a home and you're like, we got to this point and nothing's happening. Lots of frustration, lots of anxiety kicks in. The same is happening for your student. You just want to be moving forward, right? Just moving forward a little bit. So what you can do is download the Algebra Readiness Test. The link is below. And if you missed the video, what should my 7th grader take in terms of math? It's the link to that video is down below. We talk about going through this and what is pre-algebra. We talk about all of that down there. So again, we're going to kind of drill down on this a couple more times. If you got questions, we want to be helpful. We don't want to beat this dead horse to say, but we do want to be helpful to those of you that are trying to answer the question. We have just noticed that this is a big point. This is a jumping off point for a lot of parents and students, is when do we move into the college material? Getting from Algebra 1 to geometry is not near as hard of a question than it is to getting to Algebra 1. The rest of these are smoother transitions. There's decisions to make for you and your student, but this one you can understand is a little bit of a leap across the chasm, and let's see what's happening. So if we can help you, if you'll let us know at support@askdrcallahan.com, and we'll put that link here also below. Thank you.